Speakers Corner, that will mean that we have asked for people to express their vision on Europe and to complement our vision, so that we have a broader vision here in this seminar. That doesn't mean that we do agree with them. That doesn't mean that, but we think it's important that we have an open debate and that we have the vision from different organizations here in this seminar. So I would like for 3 minutes asking Luigi Leonori to come here, if he is here. No? Okay, then I will ask Klaus if he will come from the basic income.
Yes, Luigi was there.
Oh, yes, but we can start with Klaus and then with Luigi. Please, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to speak to you. And our group is also very interested in the social Europe at the end, yes. And I want to report a little that we had a European Citizens Initiative started last year. And the title of this was Unconditional Basic Income, Exploring a Pathway Towards an Emancipatory Welfare Conditions in the European Union. And in the long term, that means that we want to have the introduction of unconditional basic income. In the short term, there was said we will make some investigations of different models and so on. And certainly this project from unconditional basic income, that means that you have it with 4 criteria: everybody, personalized, and high enough and unconditional from any other things. That means, in our opinion, unconditional basic income is a human right and therefore not dependent on any other condition. Everybody who is born will get it until he is died, and then the payment of the state is over. And that is a very simplification of the social state. At the moment, we had in nearly all countries a compensatory social state. That means at first you must be very poor, then you will get something. What we want to do is we want to have an emancipatory social state. That means because you are a human being, you will get it without any condition. That is the most important message.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this statement. Okay, then I will ask Luigi Leonori from Smith to have his 3 minutes statement.
Merci de cette opportunité de reprendre peut-être l'observation que j'avais fait au commencement. Notre association SMES, ça signifie santé mentale, exclusion sociale. Les deux choses sont très liées. Il n'y a pas un bien-être s'il n'y a pas une santé physique, une santé psychique et une santé sociale. Nous voudrions une Europe de santé, une Europe de bien-être, non une Europe où il y a tous des gens avec un masque qu'on essaye de faire voir et en réalité on n'est pas. Donc c'est un tout petit peu ça le message qu'on est en train. Et si je prends 2 termes qu'on est dans un projet qu'on essaie de porter avant, c'est dignité et bien-être. Dignité, ça signifie tous les droits auxquels on a, le moment qu'on vient au monde, on a droit. Mais tout le monde déclare les droits, mais l'accès aux droits, ce n'est pas la même chose. Et c'est dans cet accès aux droits que nous continuons à insister. De quelle manière faciliter tout le monde, même les personnes qui sont dans la grande précarité, d'avoir un accès au droit à la santé physique. Et aujourd'hui, on voit qu'est-ce que c'est, les maladies qui grandissent à cause de la pauvreté, psychique, et on voit quelles sont les conséquences du stress et de la perte du travail, la perte du logement. Et sociale, on voit quelle est la situation de rupture de la cohésion sociale. Donc, si nous on insiste sur ces 2 dimensions, d'un côté la dignité les droits. D'un autre côté, le bien-être, l'accès au vivre bien. Et je pense que ça, c'est pour une Europe solidaire, parce que la solidarité aussi, ça doit être nord et sud, et pas seulement entre les citoyens. Voilà, ça, c'est un peu le message que j'ai mis comme ça pour échanger avec vous. Et ça, je vous remercie. C'est 3 minutes?
Oui, c'est très bon. Merci bien. Then I will give the floor to Paul Murphy from Ireland, European Parliament. He was in, when we were in with the alliances in Dublin, he was one of the eminent speakers of, for the parliamentarians and the discussion in the election time over there. Okay, Paul?
Thank you very much, and thanks a lot for the invitation. To start with, I mean, social Europe, it's an ideal which I share, but it's worth recognizing the reality that we're far from the ideal today, and we're moving further and further away from it. The direction of travel is not the direction that all of us want, because consciously of a policy led by the European Commission, led by the European Central Bank, led by governments all across Europe. That's the reality. Austerity is being used as a weapon to destroy previous gains won by people, steps made towards a social Europe. I think it's worth looking back look at those elements of a social Europe that exists or have existed within Europe, and how were they achieved. Take, for example, equal pay for equal work. Where did that come from? Did it come from the benevolence of the European Commission? Did it come from the benevolence of the governments across Europe? And it didn't. It came from struggle from below, a major strike in France, the Bread and Roses strike, that was then reflected in the Treaty of Rome, and then that took major struggle throughout the 60s and 70s to become a reality. And I think there's a lesson there about how change comes about from a positive direction. It comes from below, it comes from struggle, it comes from people organising to defend their rights. It doesn't come from these people, unfortunately, granting what they should grant, or reasoned argument or whatever. The other point is just to emphasise the direction of travel, how bad things are at the moment. I mean, you look at all the targets that we're in favour of, the elimination of poverty targets, the rate of people at work, all those targets, they're not only non-binding, they're going to be destroyed. The number of people in poverty is going up as opposed to going down. The rate of people in the workforce is now lower. The rate of women in the workforce, rate of young people in the workforce in the labour market is less than what it was when Europe 2020 targets were set. So they're all going in the wrong direction, and the European Commission really doesn't care. And you have to look at the difference between the way those targets are treated and all the new targets they're imposing. The new targets of debt to GDP ratio, the new targets of structural deficit, all the things contained in the six-pack, in the two-pack, in the fiscal treaty. And you see that the crisis, they're not just dealing with the crisis as, okay, let's deal with this crisis and try and get out of the crisis. They undoubtedly see the crisis as an opportunity. And it's an opportunity precisely to push back those elements of a social Europe that have been won in the past, and to embed in a legal form neoliberalism. That's what's happening, in my opinion. And the latest step of it is the Competitiveness Pact, which is contracts for austerity between member states and the European Commission. And so I think, I have no question that I'm speaking to people who know these things. But I think the only thing we can rely upon is to look back at how things were won in the past, and then to try to organize resistance, to try and organize opposition. And I do think like a strategically important issue in this context is precarious work, is the working poor, is precarity. It's not the only issue, but it's a huge rising issue, and it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue. Because if you look at the model of the recovery that the European Commission is looking for, they want people to have jobs again, but jobs that are on significantly lesser wages, significantly worse in conditions, significantly more flexible. That's where a huge battle is taking place around the notion of flexicurity, etc. And so I do think, together with a defence of and a fighting for a decent social welfare state, a decent welfare state, decent provisions, and all the things we struggle for, the question of a living wage, along with basic income, which I agree with, but the question of a living wage across Europe, I think it can be something, it can be a demand that can touch people across Europe, who know that the so-called recovery that they're experiencing is not a real recovery, it's not affecting people's lives, and it can be a basis for mobilizations. And I think trying to develop those mobilizations, not just in one country, but on a pan-European scale is so important, particularly in the context of all the nationalist propaganda, particularly in the context of the rise of the far right. We have to develop some common European struggles against austerity, but also with a vision of the kind of Europe that we'd like. Thanks a lot.
For the last one, I would like to give the word to Maria, member of EAP in Portugal and also member of the alliances. I think it's also important that we hear the voice of the grassroots organizations for the anti-poverty network in Portugal. Maria.
Hello, thank you. What we are looking at is destruction of democracy in Europe, and that we should be aware. And I came from Portugal, one of the countries that is has Troika there, and what I see is people living poor all the time, and the austerity measures are doing quite bad to the people. One of the things is that we should bear in mind is that people that are poor are still more poor, and organizations so also EAPN struggle with that, because we cannot cross our arms and do nothing about all the policies against people that really live in poverty. One of the things I want to say also is that what we are looking at is we have to fight to defend human rights. And human rights, we defend it if we fight against inequalities. So we should give the voice to the people who experience poverty, because people knows what they need to get out poverty. Last November in Portugal, we did, because there is the austerity and the social politics are killing the social policies for poor people. And we had a conference about 600 people only to talk about social benefits. And that let me think that it matters. It matters what people think about social benefits, and we have to do a really big dialogue about in Europe, and we have to think about subsidiarity and what Europe we want, if we want a Europe at 2 speeds, or if you want a Europe as or you say Europe as a territory of where is a social model that we can defend, where people are proud to live, and we can be happy together. Okay.
Thank you very much.